Alright, what's up, Dragon Brood? This next deck we're going to talk about is Rakdos, I guess we'll call it halved lives, for cutting life totals in half. Like, this is actually an interesting list because we have so many cards that care about double damage, lose half your life, when you're hit, lose half your life, blah, 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 right? So we now have enough cards that we can kind of start considering building a deck around them. So what does that deck need to look like? Because all those things are kind of 3, 4, 5 mana. So let's start by talking about Bloodletter of Aclazotz. This is a weird art that it chose for this one. But Bloodletter is a colorless black, 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 2/4 flying. If opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. So again, you're going to see that as a theme throughout this deck. The thing about this card is it's a demon, which we'll talk about while that's important here in a little bit. But it is a 2/4 flyer. Now, it does cost 4 mana, but that means we just have to have other creatures that allow us to get there. Along the way, we're going to be playing some Caustic Bronco. This card's really good. It's a 2 mana 2/2. I think you're going to see a lot of it moving into the new standard, partly because we have cards that care about being tapped, and it's good for that. But there's also a lot of things we just want to dig to right now, especially in this list. So yeah, if you haven't played with the Caustic Bronco, I recommend you get acquainted with it because you're probably going to see it across the table quite a bit if you haven't already. Of course, Deep Cavern Bat, because we're playing black. We're playing a pseudo aggro-y, mid-rangey thing. Why would we not be playing Deep Cavern Bat? Card's very silly, but also very good. I don't know if us gaining life is going to matter that much, but it's really just taking the problematic cards out of their hand and buying time. Now, one of the new cards that is making the cut in this list is Screaming Nemesis. 2 colors and a red, 3/3 with haste. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. This is actually well within the game plan of what this deck's trying to do, right? If your goal is just keep chopping their life total in half, you want it to shrink down as much as possible till you can kill them. You don't want them gaining life and disrupting that. Well, this can make sure that doesn't happen. Be aware, though, it's not whenever this card deals damage to the opponent. It's when it particularly deals damage from its redirection ability. So it has to take damage from something and then deal that damage to the opponent to keep them from being able to gain life the rest of the game. Now, this thing also has haste, so it's very good just to play on rate, attack, and see what happens, right? It's also a good card to have after a sweeper, so maybe you hold this one back while you're doing your other things. Now, it doesn't necessarily do exactly the game plan that we want, but it is a card that creates a lot of problems for your opponent, especially if you've already put their life total sub 10, maybe they're at 8. Now it becomes a problem on what do they block this with, so they're not taking significant damage, which means they're probably blocking it with like a 1/1 or a 2/2 on some level just to take some chip damage if they don't have a 3/3 to trade with it. But even then, if they block with a 3/3, then you're going to trade with that creature anyway. You can redirect that 3 damage to another thing to try to kill it. Or if they're playing something big, some mono green, whatever, with some monsters, well, if this sits back, your opponent never wants to attack. Unless they have maybe something with trample, because then they can assign just 3 to this and whatever, but that's kind of like their only way around it. So this card's actually problematic and very good. I expect it should be pretty well in here. Of course, we're going to play some Shieldred, and it chose the Phyrexian text one. That's silly. But Shieldred, we know what it is. It's 4 mana, 4/5. It has Death Touch for no good reason. And then if you would draw a card, you gain 2 life. If your opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. This fits here, obviously just having the extra life loss once you've already put your opponent's life total down. And you can create a scenario where they can't gain life. Also, you know what's really funny about the Screaming Nemesis? You can create a scenario where your opponent can't gain life from their Shieldred, potentially, which I find highly hilarious. So just something to think about. One of the other new cards making the list, though, is Unstoppable Slasher. Everybody wants to play with this card, and I get it. It's a 3 mana 2/3. It does have Death Touch, so super annoying. And if it deals damage to the opponent, they lose half their life rounded up, which is super ridiculous. And if it dies, instead of just going to the graveyard, it comes back with 2 stun counters on it. So it means you basically have to wait a couple of turns to be able to attack with it again. But it'll be locked and loaded, ready to go, right? It's a 2/3, so you can trade with a fair amount of stuff. It having Death Touch also means your opponents aren't going to want to attack with several things. So it's just going to be a generally annoying card for your opponent to deal with, but it is really damn good. Moving into a couple of sorceries here, we do have Demonic Council. This card's actually super sweet because it can go let us get the Bloodletter of Aclazotz. Now, otherwise, It doesn't do a ton for us until we potentially have Delirium, and we only have a couple of things that can let us get to it. So this is mostly tutor for Bloodletter in a lot of cases, but that's kind of okay. I don't think that's a bad card to go get, and it's totally worth it. But we also are going to play a copy of Rush of Dread, right? This fits our game plan as well. If you do have a Bloodletter, then you go ahead and have your opponent lose half their life, which means they lose double their life, and then they just die, right? This is a combo we've seen before, but if you're in a pinch, you can have your opponent lose half their creatures rounded up, or you can have them discard some cards, right? So this does a lot of things for us still, and I think it's still worth playing. I only have one in our list because I just couldn't find any more room, but I think the card is totally worth considering. And then for our instance, we have some Go for the Throat. No real surprise here on this one. We just got to have some removal. Again, trying to buy time, get things out of the way so that way our creatures can connect, especially if you're on the play, right? You want that unstoppable slasher to be able to hit. You want to be able to set up your Bloodletter and have them lose a bunch of life all at once. We are also playing some Lightning Strike and some Shock, just so we have some early removal we can pick off. And there's also another card that we're considering playing in the new list, and it's Grievous Wound. This is 3 colorless, black, for an aura that enchants a player. So you put this on your opponent, obviously, so they can't gain life. And then, if a player's dealt damage, they lose half their life rounded up. So now we have a bunch of different combinations of how we can chop their life total in half multiple times, how we can have them instant lose from a hit, right? Now, this is 5 mana, so we're only playing a couple of copies. I wouldn't say go crazy with this. I could even see an argument if you want to play one of this and you want to play another Rush of Dread. I think that is totally reasonable since Rush of Dread just has more utility to it, and you don't have to worry about this sitting on the battlefield and getting dealt with by the opponent. I think that's more than reasonable if you want to go down that road. But I think as a package, all of these spells do come together pretty well. And we're also going to talk about Blazemire Verge. With this being a black heavy deck, we were already going to be heavy on swamps anyway, so replace some of the swamps we were going to play and just toss in a few Blazemire Verge. Again, I think this is just going to be swamp plus pretty much all the time, right? Other than counting as a basic swamp, this is always just going to be better than a swamp. So if you were going to play, I don't know, let's call it 10 swamps or whatever, cool, we cut 4 and we just play 4 Blazemire Verge. Why not? We don't have any, I mean, we only have a handful of red cards, right? We have the Screaming Nemesis, we have Lightning Strike, and Shock. So we have 10 cards. But between the Blazemire Verge, Blackcleave Cliffs, Fabled Passages, 2 Mountains, and Sulphur Springs, we'll be fine. Because we only have to get 1 red mana onto the battlefield, and then we can do whatever we want to do. The rest is all about making sure you have multi-lands that produce black, so that you can actually cast all of your stuff on time, with the things that need double black or triple black in their cost. Very important. And that's why the mana base is built out the way it is. But yeah, these Verge lands are super good. I don't know how else to tell you this. I know some people are going to argue they're not as good or whatever. No, they are. They are good. Trust me. They're good. You're going to see people playing them. I don't know what else to tell you. So if you're playing the colors, if they already exist in the colors you like to play, go ahead and craft them because you're going to need them. That's literally it. There's nothing else to tell you. You're going to need them. But yeah, overall, if you're looking to play the make your opponent lose half their life, try to end the game with weird combo situation, this is probably the deck you want. Matter of fact, I would even say the final list is probably going to get updated to be -1 Grievous Wounds and probably an additional Rush of Dread. Because again, Rush of Dread, you can even use it in a pinch for 4 mana against like Boros tokens to make them lose like half their stuff, right? Any of those situations just give you that flexibility you want, and I don't know if you need to have Grievous Wounds. The thing is, though, Grievous Wound does allow you to set up the ability to have it and then do something else the next turn, whereas Rush of Dread means you kind of have to get your other stuff down and then leave your mana up to be able to cast Rush of Dread, which also makes it susceptible to a counter. So, up to you. Just saying, there's some options here. But hope you like it. If you do, remember to like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the videos on the other decks that we're doing. And make sure you don't miss the other upcoming videos we have, because we're going to have stuff that you should craft and shouldn't craft, and favorite cards in the set, and all kinds of things. So you want to make sure you get all that. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.